Okay, so this slide concerns summary writing, and the idea here is that you read the work once to get a sense of the main idea. You read more carefully the second time, taking notes on each paragraph that capture what each paragraph communicates and how each paragraph functions in the work, and then you outline the work to identify separate phases of development. Finally, you draft and revise your summary. The first paragraph of Superman and Me says that the author learned to read at age 3 on the Spokane Indian Reservation. So that is the basic information that's communicated by that paragraph. What that paragraph does, the way that paragraph functions in the essay, is to introduce the work, to relate the subject, which is reading, and to provide the background of the author. Second paragraph says, "My father influenced my love of reading." The purpose of this paragraph is to begin the body of the essay, to relate the first step of the process of the author learning to read, and to share information about the character of the father through revealing his exposure to his father's love of reading. It provides further background information, lets us know that the father was intellectually curious and had a passion for reading and read anything he could acquire. Notice the effectiveness in paragraph 2 of the topic sentence that is then detailed by the paragraph that follows. The third paragraph says, "I discovered paragraphs and applied the concept to aspects of the world around me." And what this paragraph does is it develops the process of learning to read. It presents us with the second step of learning to read, which is understanding paragraphs, and it provides further background information on his family. So as he is taking us through the process of his learning to read, he is weaving in details about his family life that enrich our sense of who the author is and the struggle and the conflict that he faced. The fourth paragraph says that studying the panels of a Superman comic book taught me to read. What this paragraph does is it develops the process of his learning to read with the third step, which is connecting the words to the action depicted in the pictures in a Superman comic. And you need to notice the effective use of repetition in this paragraph, because this is something that you need to be aware of when you write. You want effective repetition, intentional repetition, rather than lazy, redundant use of the same words over and over, or the same sentence structures over and over. In this essay by Sherman Alexie, we have both effective use of repetition and effective use of the same sentence structure, repeating the first phrase of a sentence at the start of the sentence several sentences in a row is effective in this essay because it's done intentionally. When it is not done intentionally, and when it is just a result of unconscious writing and first draft writing presented as final draft writing, then it is not effective. But there are ways to use repetition effectively that are illustrated in the fourth paragraph of Superman and Me. So notice that, as well as the choice of action and language depicted in the comic book. Superman says, "I am breaking down the door." The return to Superman unifies the content with the introduction. The use of breaking down the door serves as a metaphor not only for what Superman is literally breaking down a door in this comic book, but as he learns to read, the author is breaking down the door that has locked him out of learning, and now learning to read is breaking down a door into literacy. So it serves as a metaphor, and it connects with the language of the conclusion. Also, for Sherman Alexie, of course, learning to read, he's making the point that this breaks down the door of poverty in his life. In paragraph 5, the paragraph reveals that Alexie was not celebrated for his great ability, and it was painful for him to be different from his classmates and from the other kids who lived on the reservation. What this paragraph does is it provides a sharp transition from the joy of learning to read to the consequences of being a fluent reader in the context of growing up on the reservation. So this paragraph really introduces and identifies fully the conflict that the author faced. Conflict is, of course, a central element of your literacy narrative, something that you need to make sure you bring out in the writing of your essay. So notice in this paragraph the intentional and significant shift from first person to third person. he does this to show his distance from himself. So there's a definite reason for shifting from first person narration to third person narration. Anytime you have such a shift, there needs to be a clear reason that's evident to your reader. In paragraph 6, he reveals the nature of the conflict. Again, a smart Indian is a dangerous person. Both inside and outside the culture, Indian children were not expected to be high academic achievers. School authorities had low expectations for Indian students, and his peers also expected him to resist the outside culture because they viewed it as a betrayal of his Native American culture to try to assimilate into the American culture by becoming an excellent student in the American school. So he, in his natural pursuit of intellectual curiosity, was not able to please anyone and was not appreciated by his teachers, was resented by his classmates, and some of whom were the other members of his tribe on the reservation. So what this paragraph does is it amplifies and explains the conflict established in the previous paragraph. For paragraph 7, he says that he read indiscriminately, which means he did not scrutinize what he was reading. He didn't only want to read books about birds or Superman comic books. He read anything he could get his hands on, including the backs of cereal boxes and advertisements, anything that he could read. So he read with equal parts desperation and joy, and here he reveals the main idea of the essay. I was trying to save my life through the process of learning through reading. So what this paragraph does is it communicates his refusal to meet the low expectations of his peers and of authorities, and it details his voracious appetite for reading and his realization that reading would be his way out of pain, poverty, of this reservation life that was oppressive to him. Notice in this paragraph the effective use of repeated sentence structure. I read, I read, I read, I read, I read. This is what I was talking about in the previous slide. This intentional repetition reinforces the point that he's making, that he's reading with equal parts desperation and joy. And it also reinforces the pace of his reading, his appetite for reading, and the amount of reading that he did. So also in this paragraph, notice the effective use of topic and summary sentences. In paragraph 8, this paragraph says, I am a writer today. I return to teach on the reservation. I encounter the same resistant Indian children, but also enthusiastic readers and writers. And he says again, I am trying to save our lives by going back to the reservation and trying to inspire other students with the love of reading and writing and creative expression through writing and creative discovery through reading. He is trying to save lives of children who are still in the cycle of poverty in the reservation. And he concludes the essay that, the way that this essay, this paragraph functions in the essay is to conclude it and to unify the content with the door metaphor and with the repetition of reading as potentially life-saving activity, which is the thesis or narrative point of the essay. So it's important to look at the organization of this essay, especially with the purposes of summarizing it. You want to notice the breakdown of the body of the essay. The introduction occurs in paragraph 1, where he reveals that he learned to read at age 3 and he grew up on the Spokane Reservation. The body of the paragraph of the essay spans from paragraphs 2 to 7 and covers his first phase of learning to read, the father's influence, the realization of paragraphs, and the comic book panels that he read. The body continues with the second phase, which really hones in on the conflict, being a smart Indian, low expectations from inside and outside the culture, and his refusal to conform to the stereotype. And the conclusion is when he relates that he is a writer now. He escaped the reservation, but he comes back. He returns to visit and to teach writing, and it's the clear statement of the thesis or the narrative point or the main idea of the essay. I am trying to save our lives.